NVIDIA, the dominant leader in AI chips, they have an estimated 80% market share. They just had another blockbuster earnings report. Their company stock jumped 16% last Thursday when earnings were released. And NVIDIA's market cap is now right around $2 trillion. In 2024 alone, the stock has risen 63%. Now, this is being powered by the need for GPUs or graphics processing units, which are the chips that power AI applications. As every company kind of becomes an AI company, NVIDIA expects demand for these chips to skyrocket over the coming years. So first up, Paul, I wanted to get your thoughts on this crazy successful earnings call and kind of what this might mean for knowledge workers and businesses who presumably can expect a huge boom in AI applications and power moving forward.
So I had a couple of thoughts. I was watching closely. I started investing in NVIDIA myself, probably somewhere around like 2014 or 15 when it was around 60 some dollars a share. Um, my personal feeling back then, so when we really started exploring AI deeply at a personal level, was that Wall Street just completely was missing the boat on AI, and the companies that were positioned for once corporations started actually infusing AI and we started really scaling up the use of AI, that they were just completely missing that Microsoft, Amazon, NVIDIA, Tesla to a degree, Google, that they were all AI companies and they were being valued based on what they currently did, not what they were going to do and what they were going to mean to society. So I've been a huge investor in NVIDIA for a long time. And so I was watching with kind of nervous energy leading up to the earnings call last week, because when you go and look, so I have a probably, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 analysts, financial analysts that I follow pretty closely, mostly on Twitter, that I use as kind of a barometer for what I think might happen in the financial world. And they were split. So there was some analysts who are like, yeah, there's no way they're going to hit these insane markers that that Wall Street has put on them in terms of revenue and earnings, um, and growth. And then the other one's like, no, they're going to do it. They blow it away every quarter. They're going to do it again. And so you realize like these people have no idea. Like they have more access to information than obviously we do, and it's just educated guesswork. So there was some analysts who very confidently thought that, you should take some money off the table, sell some of that NVIDIA stock before the earnings, and then that night after the earnings, like it was up at, I think, 16% in after hours trading, like something crazy like that. So just to give some context to NVIDIA's stock, if you'd have put 10,000 into NVIDIA back in 2014, that $10,000 would be worth approximately 1.7 million today. I unfortunately didn't have $10,000 to invest back in 2014, so I didn't personally turn 10,000 into 1.7 million, but I started investing and I just kept investing over time. NVIDIA, after this earnings breakthrough, is now the fourth largest company in the world, surpassing Google and Amazon, who are 6 and 5 now, and NVIDIA is up at number 4. So the thing that there was a couple things that came out of this that I think are really relevant to anyone who listens to this podcast, either because of your personal investing and you're trying to kind of figure out how to benefit from AI and which stocks are worth investing in, to what's actually happening in AI, and what you can learn from the NVIDIA call and the transcript when you read or listen to the transcript from Jensen, is how they view the future. And the big thing to date is their growth has in many ways been driven by the need for their GPUs to train these models. So when we talk about Inflection and Anthropic and OpenAI and Amazon and Google, they're all training these large language models, which requires a massive amount of compute. Meta is another one we've talked about. So they need these GPUs to train. But the real growth in the future is what's called inference. It's once the training is done and you and I use the model, we query ChatGPT or Anthropic or Gemini or whatever, that moment when it now goes and computes information to output something to us is called inference. So what they're looking at is saying, hey, in enterprises, we haven't even really hit the adoption curve yet. We've talked about this many times on the show. All this growth in these tech stocks have happened without wide scale enterprise adoption. So once enterprises actually start using these generative AI tools into their daily workflows, there's a whole new level of growth that happens and a whole new level of need for these GPUs, for these processing units. And so the way Jensen has talked about it before is in these like four waves of AI. And so Gene Munster, who's one of the people I follow, one of kind of the financial analysts, he's the managing partner at Deepwater Asset Management. So he's really active on Twitter. He shares great insights into these stocks and stuff. And so he had tweeted last week about how Jensen talks about these sort of four waves of AI. The first is sort of this training, this infrastructure build out where we're training these models. And then you start to get into the inference level in like the second wave. And so he basically said, like, we're at like 25% into the first wave. The second wave is where enterprises really start using these generative applications, and that will specifically take off with AI agents. Now, we'll talk more about AI agents in a topic later on today. We've talked plenty about AI agents in recent episodes. But once these agents start getting integrated into the software we use, now we're talking about billions of agents being built. And that, like, the average marketer, the average business person may be using dozens of different AI agents every day to assist in tasks. That is a whole nother level of computing power. And that's where inference happens. That's where we're like constantly calling on these models to take actions and help us deliver outputs. So that's the second wave. We haven't hit that yet. We're at the very, very beginning of that wave, possibly. The third wave is heavy industry. This is where like manufacturing and other industries really start to figure out how to use it. And the fourth wave is sovereign AI, which is basically every government in the world infusing generative AI into every application. So again, when we think about where this goes, we're just entering the growth phase of this technology. The AI is not widely adopted. We're in this really within this first wave, maybe starting to play into the second wave with some enterprise adoption, but it's early. And when Jensen, we talked about Sam potentially raising, like Sam Altman, 5 to 7 trillion to build infrastructure. What they're all looking at, whether it's Google, OpenAI, Anthropic, Amazon, they're basically looking out 5 to 10 years from now into a world where these AI agents are everywhere, that inference is happening all the time for every task that's happening within knowledge work. And they're saying, we don't have enough data centers for this. And so there's a massive movement to build more capacity, to build more data centers, to build more chips. And so infrastructure is critical. So again, when we go back to like, what should you be investing in personally? I'm not giving stock advice. I'm not telling you to invest in NVIDIA personally. Like, I'm just setting the stage for where this is all going to go. Infrastructure is critical to everything. They have to build more data centers, and the supply chain that enables the building of those data centers and the management of those data centers is going to be critical. So Jensen said he thinks there needs to be 1 trillion in infrastructure built out in the next 5 years, which is double the current pace. So he doesn't buy in. He was actually asked about Sam's 5 to 7 trillion, and he kind of laughed. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know that we need that much," because he feels like the AI is going to accelerate the efficiency of building and doing inference, like building these models and doing inference. So we don't necessarily need as much as that, but 1 trillion is a lot, and so that's kind of where we're looking. And so when I look out to the future, I'm thinking personally about investing, or I'm thinking about like what's going to happen in business. You have to understand that they all believe AI agents are going to be key. Those agents are going to need a lot of computing power, which is going to need a lot more chips and a lot more data centers. And that's basically the next 5 to 10 years of business.
Wow, there's some serious implications to what we're talking about here. And one of them is kind of what you highlighted about AI agents. And while you had shared some post earnings call thoughts on LinkedIn that were related to the impact of all this, of agents, of this infrastructure build out, of where we're going on agencies, value added resellers, VARs, and knowledge workers. So, can you share what caught your attention in some of the comments that Jensen, the CEO, had made in a post earnings call, and kind of what we should be thinking about to prepare for all these coming changes?
Yeah, there was a tweet in particular from it was John Fort, who's CNBC Overtime, and it's about a 14-minute clip overall, but there was about a 50-second clip that caught my attention. And so in this excerpt, Jensen says the world's enterprise software platforms represent about $1 trillion. These application-oriented tools or application-oriented tools-oriented platforms and data-oriented platforms are all going to be revolutionized with these AI agents that sit on top of it. And the way to think about this is very simple. Whereas these platforms used to be tools that experts would learn to use, in the future, these tools companies will also offer AI agents that you can hire to help you use these tools or to help you reduce the barrier of using these tools. So again, if you're a new listener to the show and don't know my background and Mike's background, I owned and ran a marketing agency for 16 years. We were HubSpot's first value-added reseller partner in 2007. So I built my agency on the back of HubSpot and providing services to HubSpot customers that didn't want to use the platform themselves or didn't have the internal staffing to use the platform. So we just became experts in HubSpot, and we delivered services to companies that wanted to grow using their CRM system and marketing and sales and customer service tools. So I looked at this quote, and Mike worked with me there starting back, 2011, Mike, I think. So we
Yeah,
spent like 10 years
2011.
at that agency together. So so as soon as I heard this, I was like, wow, like that's going to transform ecosystems. And we've known this, like we've talked about this on the show, but to hear Jensen say it was like a whole nother level of like, okay, like this is actually happening now. They believe this to be true. And so I immediately started thinking about what's going to happen to these agencies and VARs if they don't change fast. Like they need to really be thinking about what is the impact of having AI agents that can do stuff almost at no cost. I mean, like
Mhm.
realistically, the cost versus what it would cost to traditionally hire humans to do this work is going to be next to zero. And so if all of the sudden I can go into HubSpot or Salesforce or Oracle or Intuit or whoever has built these VAR networks or agency ecosystems, and I can hire an agency, or I can just turn on an AI agent, whether it's built natively within one of these platforms or a third party tool like Multion or Adept or, HyperWrite, which we'll talk about, where someone else has built an agent that basically just sits on your browser and can do task work for anything you do on your browser, which would include these platforms. And so to me, the implications are massive. I'm saying this specifically for agencies of ours, but step back and say, no, this is like all knowledge workers, like anyone who works in these platforms, even on the brand side, you're using tools that an agent is going to be trained to use. And the way it will happen is you will literally just turn the agent on and it'll learn how to do what you do by watching you once. And so that's what is going to be enabled is like, so let's say I go into HubSpot and I'm going to do my 21 clicks to send an email. It will learn from watching me click where I click. And then it will learn how to do that. And the next time I need to do that task, it will have learned it. And I will just click a button and it'll go do that task. And so it's like almost imagine going into your platform and say, I want to run a new report. And I turn on the agent and say, okay, learn. Maybe it's just a learn button. And it now watches everything I do on my browser and it learns that task by watching. And then I finish training or whatever, and it's now done. It now knows how to do that task moving forward. So you're going to be able to do that. So if you're an agency or a VAR, one thing you may do is offer services to train these models. Like that's part of what your job might become, one of the services you might offer. So in the post, and we'll kind of put this in, what I would say is like follow me on LinkedIn is a great way to kind of see these kind of things, and we'll put the link in, the post link in there so you can go check this out. But basically what I did is I took our human to machine scale of like levels of automation of knowledge work, and I shared that, and then I shared a bunch of features within the HubSpot platform, and I said one way to kind of future proof your company or your career is go through the features of these platforms that you spend all this time in and try and take some educated guesses about which things the AI agents will do and which things will be left for the humans to do. And if you're confident that the AI agents are going to do the vast majority of the work that those features enable, don't be building services around that anymore. And like really start moving to the features and capabilities these platforms enable that are going to be very minimal AI assistance. Um, So I think it's like a really important thing that people start to truly look at the impact AI is going to have. So what we call an AI impact assessment, that you start to look out and think about your own job description, the platforms that you use, the campaigns you run, the workflows you run, really start to consider 12 months from now, what does this start to look like? Because that is the only way to get out ahead of this stuff.
Wow. So it sounds like, if I'm hearing this right, so if I'm a business that would historically hire an agency or a professional to do something, and I now can start thinking about, well, can an agent overlaid HubSpot, laying over HubSpot, simply help me do this instead? I mean, that's a simple but extremely disruptive idea.
Very much, and the way I think about it is, I don't realistically think it changes much in like 2024. I think more people will start to experiment with these agents, but as we've said on the podcast before, you're gonna have to give up a pretty significant level of privacy, and you're gonna have to have a lot of trust in the companies that you allow to see everything you do on your browser. So I don't think adoption, one, I don't think the tech is quite there yet. So we're not at the stage where literally tomorrow you're going to turn this stuff on and it's going to start doing this stuff. So we've got time. And this is what I'm saying. Like you have time right now to plan for this. If you're a company, if you are a value added reseller or an agency that provides professional services, you have time to figure this out. But that time is going to come really fast. So I think 2024, there's going to be some breakthroughs in the ability to build these agents. Actually, NVIDIA, we'll talk next week about this, but Jim Fan just announced like they just started a whole new research arm within NVIDIA that obviously has probably more funding than any research firm in the world to build agents. Like everybody's going to build these things. And so I think 2024 is going to see some breakthroughs and we're going to start to see very early adoption, almost kind of like maybe where we are with generative AI today, where you're starting to find those use cases and like adoption is going to move. I think 2025 might be where we are today with generative AI, with AI agents. Like by this time next year, you're going to have some leading corporations that are starting to infuse AI agents at a more regular level, maybe through like Microsoft Copilot or something. But probably by like 2026, 2027, the tech is now there. We've solved all the privacy concerns, and now you're going to see just a takeoff point. So I think that there is, again, there's time to plan for this, but this may be way more disruptive than generative AI on its own. And so as mind-boggling as generative AI is, and that we're still trying to wrap our heads around this, when we have true AI agents 2, 3, 4 years from now, it like reinvents knowledge work.